calling to order the HOF Advisory Board meeting for September. And unfortunately, we do not have ASL interpretation available today. We apologize to the group. I'm going to try to put a little bit more thought into how we make sure that we always have that available. But our apologies today. Please, if closed caption is something that makes the meeting easier for you, please utilize that. And if there's anything that you're missing related to the meeting and you would like us to send you additional information, please let us know. Okay, we're going to start with our roll call. Lena Andrews.
Here.
Darius Wallace.
Here.
Terrell Thomas. Tanika Harris.
Here.
Karen Garrett.
Here.
Ellie Fisher.
Present.
Councilwoman Gross. Deidre Washington.
Present.
Rochelle Preston. Rebecca Yago is in the room, correct?
Correct.
Alan Cisco.
Hi guys, I'm here.
Hello, Adrienne Wanaha. I am here. I apologize for not being with you in person. Robert Helwig.
Here.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. We were slightly concerned that the day after a holiday weekend would be lower attendance, but thank you all for coming out. This is wonderful. We're going to start with our review and acceptance of the last month's meeting minutes. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to review those. And if so, could we have a motion related to the August 5th minutes?
This is Ellie Fisher. I move to adopt the August minutes as presented.
Thank you, Ellie. Do we have a second?
This is Karen. I second it.
Thank you, Karen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone abstaining from this particular vote? Anyone voting nay? Great, minutes are approved. Thank you. And we do have a public comment for today. We can invite Megan Hammond, who has a public comment for us today. Megan, I know this has been a tough summer related to fair housing. We're looking forward to your remarks.
Thank you, Adrienne. Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I have left my brain in August, so hopefully it'll catch up to me in September. My name is Megan Hammond. I'm the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Partnership of Greater Pittsburgh. I'm here today because I just want to touch base on, as we enter the 2025 annual allocation process of the Housing Opportunity Fund. My ask today is that the advisory board returns to the fact that the HOF funds are from the city of Pittsburgh's real estate transfer tax. The source of the funds has become newly relevant due to new rules that have been arising regarding the use of federal funds. As you've heard me talk about, and as you may be aware, 2025 has been extremely difficult as a year for fair housing nationally. However, the housing discrimination protections enshrined within Pittsburgh City Code remains unchanged. And so I'm asking that each advisory board member engages in this year's allocation process with a particular focus and intensity, because we're starting from a place in which we start every year, in which we know, but as more than ever, is that Pittsburghers' need for safe and affordable housing far, far outweighs the $10 million that's available to us. And there's no meritocracy for determining whose housing needs are the most important. Equality and equity allow us to apportion the limited funds the best we possibly can in the face of a need that far exceeds our available resources. And so I'm asking for the board to firmly root its decision-making in available facts such as the makeup of the incomes that the programs are serving and the age of our housing stock, as well as commit to strategies that ensures that the limited funding opportunities will be made available to those in need, but who are least likely to apply. And it's also imperative in today's world that the consensus of this body is built on more than the loudest voices at the time of the vote of the allocation plan. And so to begin, I ask that we first identify what we know that we don't have enough housing funds, and that we understand the other housing funds that are available in Pittsburgh. Then hopefully we can begin to establish a working foundation on what the role is of this $10 million for 2026, given the housing landscape that we face today. So I appreciate your work and your time and all the efforts that we'll put into making very hard choices this fall. Thank you all.
See the room, so I am not sure. I will rely on Kiana. Kiana, is there anyone there in person who was also looking to make a public comment?
No.
We will inquire at the end of the meeting as well. Thank you, Megan. All right, Kiana's going to walk us through some items on the HAP program.
Good afternoon, Advisory Board. Coming back to you to talk about the Homeowner Assistance Program, or the HAP program. So the HAP program, as we know, is the Housing Opportunity Fund program that allows for $35,000 in financing to low-income homeowners to support their deferred maintenance of their home or their home renovation needs. Approximately a year or more ago, URA staff came before the advisory board to talk about what we found to be a backlog of applicants in the HAP program. That backlog was due to accepting too many applications annually. We also were allowing program administrators to support the program and not effectively budgeting for that in the allocation amount. And so there are several. We're taking fees for property reports and things like that out of the allocation, weren't properly accounting for that. And so we unfortunately ended up with more applications than we had funding for. At the time, approximately a year or so ago, we thought it was going to be 1.2 million of overage that was needed. But what we realized after working through the process, working through the projects and getting them completed is we have 13 projects left in the pipeline that total approximately $456,678.30. And so for the 2024 HAP allocation is the allocation round that we are partnering with Action Housing for the HAP pilot program. That partnership, the allocation for 2024 is $3,050,000. Our partnership with Action Housing is for $1.5 million. So we effectively have $1,550,000 uncommitted currently in the 2024 HAP round. The goal for that was, and still is, to as Action Housing is working through their HAP pilot round, we will potentially extend our agreement with them to capture the rest of the funding available for that 2024 year. But I'm coming to you today to to request that the board consider allowing the URA to use a portion of that to help support this remaining backlog of projects. So there's approximately 13 projects that remain unfunded. And again, the total amount to get those projects completed is $456,678.30. If we deduct that from the 1.55 million that remains, we will still have $1,093,000 remaining, which could support an additional 31 new projects in the future. Kristen Lawrence is the HOF program coordinator for the HAP program and all of our home repair programs at the URA. She's on the line to help support any questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
It's time for discussion. Anyone with questions, comments, concerns? I apologize. It's going to be hard for me to see you in the tiles. Alan, did you just click off with
I'll just raise my hand. Not a question, nor a concern. I think I heard you say this, Kiana, but I just want to clarify. The 3 million allocation that we started with for 2024, that was 3 million for HAP, for this kind of programming. But
Correct.
we only contracted roughly half of that with Action to do the pilot. So authorizing this additional 450 is really just authorizing this to go to Action. This group has already sort of allocated $3 million to these kinds of activities.
Correct. The group has allocated $3,050,000 to these activities. This $456,000 that we're requesting today will actually stay with the URA to help get our backlog out of,
okay.
Yeah. It won't be going to Action, but if there, there will be an additional million or more available after this. And so if we want to extend a contract with the Action Housing pilot, we still would be able to add some additional applicants into that contract as well.
What's the rationale for Action running this program and the URA sort of running this little mini program of these 13 additional? Can we not lump all that together? I'm sure there's a reason. I'm just asking what it is.
So I can, because it's been a year and there's been a lot of things happening in that time. So the reason why we decided to do the pilot with Action Housing is because we had such a large backlog that the URA wanted to not open the round ourselves, instead of focus on getting all of our backlog projects processed through and making sure we're serving the public in the best way possible. But we also wanted to open a round so that we can serve more people. And so that's why we partnered with Action Housing for the pilot. So we knew we'd kind of be URA did not open a round. Action opened the round while we get all of the old projects.
Action's doing the new round.
Correct.
And the URA is cleaning up the backlog.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Questions, comment? I do not see hands raised, but I could be missing somebody. And we'll just say I believe for this vote, Lena, you will be abstaining from this vote because there is a tangential impact because it comes out of the same fund. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's definitely correct. Thanks, Adrienne.
Thank you, Lena. If there is not more dialogue, do any of the advisory team members want to take the action and make a motion related to approving using that $456 approximate $1,000 for Action to clean up for the URA to clean up that backlog?
Ellie, you about to do it? I can do it. Ellie, I saw you lean in.
You should do it and I'll second you because I can't see it.
Okay. I'm struggling too. Okay. So I make a motion to allow, I make a motion to utilize the $456,678.30 of the 2024 HAP allocation for the 13 projects that are in backlog to the URA, leaving a little under 1.5 million to go towards Action Housing.
No, that's not,
That's
it'll be
That's separate. Yeah.
oh, that's separate. Sorry. Okay, start over. Okay.
1.1
Start
million
over.
will be remaining.
Okay, I'll start over. I make a motion for the $456,678.30 of the 2024 HAP allocation to remain with the URA to go towards the 13 projects that are in backlog.
Thank you, Tanika. Do I have a
Seconded.
second? Ellie? Thank you, Ellie. So we have one abstention and Lena Andrews. Do we have any other abstentions for this vote? Okay, great. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any votes in opposition? No, the motion carries. That next piece related to the pilot, that will be in a slightly future discussion. So we do not have to resolve that today, but thank you, everyone. I'm sure that the 13 folks who've been waiting in the pipeline are really grateful that funds will become available for their projects. All right, our URA partners are going to get us started in talking about our annual allocation plan. We're going to start with our survey and the information that the URA was able to gather over the summer.
So thank you, Adrian. I just want to take a moment to introduce John Bonello. He's the Senior Data and Evaluation Specialist here at the URA. John has been visiting us for several years to talk about the survey. He dissects all of the info. Well, he helps us create it, and he helps us provide the data to you so that you can understand how the public is looking at the work we're doing and what they think we should be doing with the funds. And so before we get started with the survey review, just want to remind our current advisory board members and let the new members know that this survey is part of our allocation plan process, which we're basically kicking off this month. And so we use a combination of the public survey data, URA staff recommendations, the recommendations of the advisory board to come together again in a future month, hopefully next month, to come up with a draft allocation. So with that, I will turn it over to John so he can walk us through the survey.
Thanks, Kiana. And good afternoon, Advisory Board. Thank you so much for having me. I'm always excited to come and talk about data to anyone who will listen. So this is exciting for me. So we are talking about this year's the 2026 Annual Allocation Plan survey results. This year, we were able to collect 631 responses, a slight decrease from last year. We collected 708, but anything over 500 responses, I'm really happy about. So 631 this year. Before I go through the agenda, I want to let you know that there is a more detailed report that we're working on that will make its way to you before the allocation process, with a lot of the insights that I'll be sharing today. So that is coming. And then everyone, I think, already has a copy of the slides. So excellent. So we're going to follow the same structure we have in years past. First, talking about demographics, establishing whose voices are present, whose voices are absent. Then we'll move into the current efforts portion of the ranked choice part of the survey, and then we'll talk about the future efforts, and then we'll have some time for questions. Walking through the demographics, we kept a lot of the demographic categories the same from last year, with one exception, that being area median income. Last year, we collected income information by combined annual household income was the metric we used, and we collected it in like bands but this time we asked for a nominal value for combined annual household income and household size. So we were able to report by area median income this year, which is really exciting as it relates more directly to some of the allocation decisions. So that was really exciting for us. Starting with resident status, we want to understand what kind of residents we're talking about here. So we have our largest group being homeowners, then renters, then we have our housing professionals and social service providers. This year, we added an additional category, experiencing housing insecurity. Last year, we used the I live with someone who is a renter or a homeowner as our proxy. This year, we ended up being a little bit more direct because we wanted to make sure we were actually really pulling out that population. So you'll see that additionally this year from last year. So experiencing housing insecurity. So those are our two lowest groups. When we're talking about age, very similar to last year, pretty even distribution by age group. Although one difference I'm seeing this year opposed to years past is a huge growth in the 35 to 44 category. Last year, it was around 17, 18%. This year, it's up to 25. This is kind of important. Usually it's a pretty even split, but this group of respondents is tending to skew a little bit younger this year. Usually we're skewing on a little bit older and a little bit higher in terms of income, but this year we're skewing a little bit younger. So that is exciting. When we're looking at race and ethnicity, it looks very similar to last year. This is very consistent with a lot of the survey results that we receive in the city of Pittsburgh. The one caveat here is that we saw a huge reduction in our Hispanic and Latino population in terms of respondents. Last year, we received about 50 Spanish language responses, and that's where we were receiving a lot of our Hispanic and Latino respondents. This year, we only received 4 Spanish language responses. So they are a little bit less represented from the 10% we saw last year. Looking at area median income, so this looks different from last year since it's not just flat income. One helpful way to look at this is 80% and lower is affordable housing qualified, while workforce and market rate housing qualified is going to be greater than 80% AMI. So in terms of the people who provided us with income information, we are skewing more affordable housing qualified respondents. I will say this is only about 400 respondents. There were about 200 respondents who declined to provide, household or income information, mostly because we asked for a direct nominal value. Some people are a little more uncomfortable providing that, so they opted out of it. So it's a little bit of a smaller group, but a little bit more related to allocation decisions since they're in AMI instead of income. And then we have our gender and sexuality identity / orientation, very similar to last year, although a slight increase in our percentage of LGBTQ folks, which I forgot to put the percentage on here, and I can get it too. I don't have it on hand. I don't want to estimate it. I'd rather give you the direct value. So I'll get in touch with Kiana and she can send it out, but it will also be in the more detailed report that we provide. And then we have our protected populations. So these are groups of people who are specifically protected by housing law. As always, we have racial or ethnic minorities as our largest group, but last year, our second largest group was religious minorities. We're seeing more growth in terms of those identifying as single parents or people with disabilities. So a slight change there, but otherwise looks very similar to last year. So overall, a pretty stable population in terms of race, gender identity, and sexual identity orientation. We saw an increase in homeowners and a decrease in renters. We also saw an increase in those indicating they belong to a protected population. So last year that was 33% of the sample. This year, more like 44% of the sample. So a little more represented in the responses. Like I said, we saw a decrease in those identifying as Hispanic or Latino. And then we saw a change in distribution, skewing slightly younger in age and moving from combined annual income to AMI. So that's large scale in terms of demographics. Moving into the ranking portions of the survey. So the first thing that we asked respondents to do is rank 6 of these 8 current efforts. The way that we had, so the current efforts are related to the programs that are supported by HOF. So this is what the question looks like. You'll notice that instead of having program names, we have phrases that are related to the program aims. So for instance, building more affordable housing for rent is going to be the rental gap program, building more affordable housing for sales, for sale development program, and so on and so forth. But that is just to get a more accurate understanding of what priorities respondents have that aren't related to the program names. And also, a lot of respondents don't know the programs by name, so it's a little bit more relatable to put them in there in these more relatable phrases. In terms of data points, you'll see 3 important data points. Number 1 is the number of rankings. So because we asked respondents to rank 6 of the 8, 2 for every response, 2 of these were left off lists. So the number of rankings tells you how many lists the program made it onto. The average rank shows the average position based on the frequency of each ranked position. And then the relative priority, we put those average ranks in numerical order and assign a relative priority. So in practice, this is what the table looks like. So we have our total rankings, our average rank, and our relative priority. Here, you'll notice some of these lines are highlighted in green. The lines highlighted in green indicate that the initiative received a lower ranking than something like above it, but it received more rankings. It showed up on more lists. So you have a little bit of dimension here just besides the relative priority. So even though building more affordable housing for rent had a higher average rank, 100 more people included improving and preserving existing housing stock on their lists. So if you're looking to make allocation decisions or closer decisions, one helpful way you can frame some of this information is, how are we helping more people, or how are we appealing to initiatives that appeal to more respondents? So we just wanted to highlight where the number of rankings doesn't necessarily match up with the average rank. Looking at these relative rankings over time, they're pretty stable. So it's actually exactly the same relative priority as last year. And you see very little variation. A lot of that variation is related to the change in the items that we asked respondents to rank. To me, this indicates that the advisory board has their finger on the pulse, that you're making allocations that are consistent with the respondents. That's really exciting, especially as it concerns the current efforts. We also did some crosstab analysis. A crosstab analysis basically isolates the data from certain affinity groups, and then we rerun the analysis to determine if there's a difference in priority based on the group. Again, so we ran for, the groups that we chose are the same as last year. So we chose our 2 racial and ethnic, the largest groups, and then we split those by area median income, just recognizing that racial groups are not monolithic and are also subject to socioeconomic differences in socioeconomic status. We also use the LGBT community, protected populations, and then we did an analysis by age and income. When looking at the current efforts, again, seeing very little variation. So I was actually pretty surprised by this, to see so many groups like on the same page about what kind of priority to assign to each of these initiatives. You will notice some of these groups rank things higher or lower. Usually, if they differ by 1 or 2 positions, you can sort of, I mean, they're not the same, but sometimes those differences are just like technical, they're computational, and they're not necessarily significant. So this was really exciting to see that the crosstabs are also showing affinity in terms of priority for these current efforts. So moving into the future efforts, this is the same kind of analysis that we did for the current efforts. One big change that I want to stress here is last year we had an item on this list. Actually, for the last 5 years, we had an item on the list that was just homelessness. This year, we rephrased homelessness into a more actionable intervention. So support for short-term housing for those experiencing housing insecurity. We noticed that homelessness was topping the list every year, but it was very unlike the other options in the way that it wasn't a direct intervention. And so we wanted to make it more similar to the other options and see if we could detect a difference. So same survey structure, number of rankings, average rank, relative priority. What we did see is support for short-term housing for those experiencing housing insecurity came in at number 8 instead of number 1. So it really shows that when you take something from a nebulous idea and make it a actionable intervention, that the priority according to the respondents looks different. And so hopefully this will encourage the advisory board to think about what kinds of interventions we want to continue serving related to homelessness, if you're interested in addressing that issue. But we're looking at the same kind of analysis here. So you can look at the average rank to understand what the relative priority is. And then I always encourage you to look at the total number of rankings and look at which of these initiatives appeal to more people despite their relative priority according to the average rank. Looking at trends, less stable trends. One thing I will say is you're going to see more variation with the future efforts. Some of that is just math. When you're ranking a subset of 6 out of 10 versus 6 out of 8, you're just going to see more variation. That's how the math works out. But we're still seeing some stable trends, but you do see some of these initiatives really rise in terms of priority, namely improving energy efficiency in homes, and also homebuyer education, which ranked number 7 in 2023 and ranked 3 this year. And then you see some that used to rank pretty high. So accessibility for seniors and people with disabilities ranking number 2 in 2023, this year coming in at a 7 in terms of relative priority. So definitely some change over time with the future efforts. But this, as I understand it, looking at these future efforts is mostly related to utilizing the demonstration dollars. So this would be a good list of things to pick from if you're looking to figure out what to do with those demonstration dollars. Again, we're going to see a lot more variation for the crosstabs just mathematically. One thing that we did really intentionally is we used this color scale. Not only are they our branded colors, but I wanted to make sure that you could visually pick out initiatives that are being ranked higher by certain groups than the total sample. So for instance, when you're seeing like yellow in a sea of blue, that's going to indicate this was ranked higher by this group. So helping renters share ownership of the building ranks number 2 for those identifying as Black in the over 80% AMI category, even though it was ranked number 10 for the full sample. One really interesting thing here related to helping renters share ownership of the building is it was ranked high by all of the over 80% AMI groups. So that indicates to me that people in higher AMI categories are more interested in like non-traditional home or property ownership arrangements. So if you're looking at future efforts, that was a really interesting thing that popped out to me. The other thing, the other group that has pretty different rankings, I would say, is those identifying as LGBTQ, prioritizing social services on location, transportation access, and tenant protections. So this is a really interesting, I think the crosstabs they can be kind of confusing to look at just like flat. But if you're looking to make decisions with allocations and you're looking to support certain populations or certain initiatives, this is where you would turn, like in terms of prioritizing some populations over others. This is where you would look to see what the priorities for those groups are. So that's the crosstabs there. Okay, so that is the analysis. Like I said, there's a more detailed report with a lot of the insights that I just shared with you in that report, but I did want to open up this time for questions.
Much, John. This is always incredibly helpful. Thoughts, questions, comments from the advisory?
So I have a comment. John, thank you. This is a huge undertaking, but it's really important to hear how you go about putting this together so we have a better understanding as to how best to make well-informed decisions. But there was one page, of course, give me a second, I'm finding it now. I was making marks, but I didn't have like a tab. There's one page that it was the crosstabs. Where's the end, right? Yeah. Wanted to ask you if you can, if we have a little bit of more time, if you can go a little deeper, because you started off by explaining to us, so our just, we don't have color in front of us. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So no, that's good. I get it. But I'm trying to go back and forth as well. But you talked about how for the helping renters share ownership of a building, that was one example.
Yeah.
Is there something else? Can you pull something else out that you believe out of this this to help us better figure out how to go about our allocation planning? Because you pulled out this one helping renters, and also you noted about the LGBTQ community. Social services was a high one. I think it was transportation access, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But just if you could just help us a little bit more with this. This is huge.
Sure.
This is, yeah.
Yeah, I will say, so there's a couple of things. Firstly, one really important thing that I will say is there is a huge last year, in terms of those identifying as Black or African American, the under 50,000 and over 50,000 annual income were a more even group. This year, the under 80% AMI group is much smaller. I don't think it's because there are more people identifying as Black or African American in lower AMI. I think that those in the higher AMI categories decline to provide demographic information. And so their responses were not included. That's why I think looking at across all of the over 80% AMI groups, you see very similar rankings, prioritizing property and home ownership. But like I said, it's really interesting. It seems to be that those groups are more open to more non-traditional arrangements in terms of property ownership. I pulled out some of those differences with the LGBT group. I will say that those identifying as LGBTQ and those identifying themselves in a protected population have similar rankings. You'll see a higher priority for tenant protections, for social services. Mostly, I think we're seeing those differences. They're also different from last year because of what Megan Hammond was talking about in her public comment earlier. There's more vulnerability in terms of housing for those groups this year. And so for those reasons, they had prioritized some of these other like tenant protection or access to public services more, because I think there's a perception that there's a threat to some of those things. Generally, we see more divergence by age and by income in terms of those under 45 and those over 45. So it's not surprising to me that they look a little bit different, but they are closer this year than they were last year in terms of some of their priorities. And I wrote down another one that is going to go in the report. I'm trying to remember what it was. And then there's like just the classic differences. So those in lower AMI categories are going to prioritize initiatives related to renting more than those related to property ownership. So that's another huge dichotomy. Is those in lower AMI categories are really focused on renter protections, tenant protections, while those in higher AMI categories are more interested in property ownership.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just quickly add, Ms. Kiana again, that this is for the potential future efforts that we would use demonstration dollars for, or, use this data to potentially create a new program. But we also have the crosstabs for the current efforts. And so do you want John to dive into those as well? So that you can see kind of the rankings of the programs that we currently are running through the HOF?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say like there's much less variation here. So these are like a lot of these groups are consistent with the full sample, which is really exciting. You will notice like some of these are like, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what to make of. So like those identifying as Black or African American over 80% AMI, and those identifying as white under 80% AMI are ranking improving and preserving existing housing stock and building more affordable housing for sale much lower than some of the other categories. So that was kind of interesting to me. But otherwise, in terms of current efforts, these are extremely consistent. And as we saw an increase in respondents identifying as LGBTQ or in a protected population, you see those two groups having the same priority for the initiatives as the full sample, which we haven't really seen the past 2 years. I think really when I look at the crosstab for current efforts, it is a testament to the fact that our outreach is reaching more people in our target demographics, which is really exciting. It really speaks to the housing team's ability to like do outreach in a purposeful way. And it was actually really exciting to see not only the change in the demographics, but to see the crosstabs look so similar to the full sample. So there are less insights in terms of the current efforts because it seems like a lot of these groups agree what the priority for these initiatives are, and they're also consistent with the allocations made by the advisory board. So when it comes to current efforts, when I look at these results, it's kind of like snaps for everybody. Like it seems like the allocations are in line with the respondents, or at least the respondents that we're reaching.
This is Ellie Fisher. I totally agree with you that this, it's really nice to see, actually. It's great, the slide that you have up right now. One of the things that I'm noticing and thinking about, this is just a commentary, not a question, is that this ranking, our survey respondents ranked actually the things that are the most expensive per unit to do, right? Like I always struggle in this allocation between like the number of people you're helping versus sort of the priority in this and the importance of putting together the units. And, you know, the first three are some of the more expensive per units activities to do. Maybe not two, but definitely 1 and 3 are, they cost a lot per unit. So I guess the community supports us putting our money in this. That's how I read it. Open to other interpretations, so.
I read it exactly the same way, although I would encourage you to use these results in tandem with the annual report that we do as well. Like one example I'll give you is like legal assistance for renters and homeowners coming in at number 6. It's in the lower half. It's near the bottom, but it's by far your biggest bang for buck program. You help the most number of people with a relatively smaller investment. So I would encourage you to use these results with the annual report outputs, so you can understand. I'm really glad you brought up per unit investment, because you can kind of compare per unit investment to some of the consumer programs as like per client investment. And legal assistance, again, by far your highest impact for your lowest investment. I think last year legal assistance reached 1,400 people. So really, and then the year before it was 800. The year before that was 2 or 3. So it just, there's clearly demand for legal assistance. And also for short-term financial help for renters and emergencies. That's going to be housing stabilization program. That's another really popular program. And I'm sure Action Housing can attest to the fact that those monies get spent down very quickly. So again, these results work really well with the annual report outputs information.
No questions from the advisory? Well, thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to, when we circulate the full report to the advisory board, I'll also send you the link to the annual report on the URA's website, so you can reference that and use it when you're doing your decision making for yourselves. Thank you, John. And with that, we'll start to walk through what is the annual allocation plan process and kind of kick off what it means for the advisory board to work through this process and what it looks like. And so when this is an annual process, it starts with the survey. And then the HOF advisory board drafts an allocation plan and provides that draft allocation plan to the URA board. They have to approve that draft allocation plan. And then the URA board, the URA will send the draft plan to the city of Pittsburgh. And we have to go through a city council process to get a final approval of the annual allocation plan. And so those will be the steps of the survey results, and we're starting that process now. We have to get our plan over to the city before the end of the year. So the goal is that in next week's meeting, hopefully we can have a great discussion and come up with a draft plan. Take it to the URA's board in November or potentially the same month if we're ready. And then send it over to the city to get ready for their budget process. Next month, hopefully. But I do want to, I mean, we understand that this process sometimes takes time. We have advocates, folks that are managing the programs, some of the programs, and we'll provide data from them next month on what they recommend, what they're requesting for their allocation. So we'll come with all the data, kind of line that all up in a chart, and then we'll figure out how you want to spend the funds. But just want to quickly review the current programs. Hopefully you can see this on the screen, but we have a consumer side to the housing department and also a development side to the housing department. The HOF advisory funds fund two different programs in the development side. That's our rental gap program, which is used to create and preserve affordable rental units across the city of Pittsburgh for renters at 60% AMI or below. And then we also have the for sale development program, which is used towards constructing or rehabbing affordable for sale opportunities for renters at 80% AMI or below. And then we have our consumer programs, which are more public-facing programs. So we have Housing Stabilization Program, which John talked about, and Action Housing coordinates that program on behalf of the URA, and they're doing that coordination, as we heard from them last month, they're coordinating with Allegheny County to help kind of provide those services through many different funding sources, and HOF is one of them through the Housing Stabilization Program. So that's our Emergency Rental Assistance Program, available to renters at 50% AMI or below. Our HAP program is our home repair program, available to homeowners at 80% AMI or below. The only program in the Housing Opportunity Fund that can go higher than federal affordability requirements is the down payment and closing cost assistance program. We can go up to 115% AMI for this program, and this is to help City of Pittsburgh residents purchase a home within the city. The Legal Assistance Program provides free housing-related legal services to those facing emergencies across the city at 80% AMI and below. And then we do have the Small Landlord Fund as well, which allows for landlords to upgrade or repair their rental properties, small landlords, excuse me, that have 10 or less rental units, to upgrade and repair their properties as long as they agree to rent those properties to tenants at 80% AMI and below for a period of at least 20 years. The Small Landlord Fund did not receive an allocation in the 2025 allocation plan round. And so it doesn't currently have any new funding. Now, I just want to provide this slide as well, just to show you year over year from 2018 through 2025, how the advisory board has designated funds towards the programs. And the rental gap program has received a majority of the funds, receiving $28,590,000 over the lifetime of the allocation. And the reason for that is this is larger rental projects. And so this is gap financing, the last financing in to make those projects work. And so using a lot more of the allocation there. Next, in the amount of money received is the HAP program, receiving over the course of the full allocation plan years, $19.5 million towards the HAP program. Next is the for sale development program, or kind of, which is our creating new for sale opportunities. And then, sorry, I'm hopping around, but I'm trying to put them in order. And then our housing stabilization program ranks next after that. Behind that is the down payment closing cost assistance program. And then the legal assistance program, demonstration program, and the small landlord fund is last, but it has not been a program since 2018. It only started in 2022 and has not received an allocation for every year since then. So this is kind of, if you think about how John just described, how the public ranks, how we should use the funds, you'll see the majority of the funds are kind of going to those top 5 ranked, publicly ranked programs. And so as we step into allocation plan season, this is something you will want to take into consideration as well. So our next step after this meeting is I will email to the advisory board this allocation plan worksheet. This will be your opportunity to enter how much money you feel each of these programs should receive based on how you feel about the survey, the communities that you're supporting, and here kind of, you know, on behalf of what you think their needs are and what you're hearing from them. You will enter that information into your worksheet, and you'll send that back to the URA, and we'll give you the deadline for that in the email. And then we will take all of the respondents' responses and average them out. And when we come back next month, we'll ask you to provide that before next month's meeting. So when we do come back next month, we'll be able to discuss kind of where you all have, where the average is, where we're seeing the advisory board would like the money to go. And again, we'll also have provider and a URA kind of request for the programs, as well as looking back at past years so you can see how we've allocated in the past. So that's our worksheet review. It's split up between different AMI levels, 30% AMI, 50% AMI, and 80% AMI. And the reason why we've split them up is because we're legislated to spend 50% of the funding towards 30% AMI and below, and 25% towards 50% AMI, and 25% towards 80% AMI. So just keep that in mind as well as you're making your decisions.
Thing we've been asked every year is this piece about the 30, the 50. You'll see that it is grayed out. 80% AMI is grayed out on a program that does not permit that program to be used in that space. So you will see, you know, the URA has done a great job of adjusting the form for us. What we have suggested to advisory team members is start through your thinking of your totals. These pieces of 30%, 50%, 80% AMI, those can get complicated once we start putting all the sheets together. So it's been helpful with our new members when we've started this process to really think through what are your program priorities, those program priorities coming from your personal and professional experience, coming from the annual report, coming from the annual survey, trying to put all of those pieces together. It has seemed to be easier to start with what your priority determinations are and work backward, as opposed to trying to say, well, my feelings about rental gap program, I'm going to put that into 2 AMI categories, and I'm going to think about legal assistance in 3 AMI categories. We've just heard from folks over time that it's really conceptualizing your priority, where you think percentages of funding should go. And the URA has been kind to us in assisting us a little bit more deeply in the 30, 50, 80% AMI, because I know that that does get a little more complicated and can be somewhat confusing. And so just putting that little suggestion that we heard in, the last two rounds, that it may just be easier to start to think about where you really think the city's priorities need to be, again, coming from your expertise and also from these other materials we've been provided, and then work your way backward.
And then quickly, I'll note that $1 million of the $10 million annually comes to the URA as admin funds. So you will be determining what to do with $9 million of the $10 million. The $1 million will remain in the admin column.
And Kiana, in previous years, we have had an administrative cost breakdown. I don't know that we've had one of those in a while.
We can provide it. I will tell you that in past years, administrative costs for the Housing Opportunity Fund have been higher than the $1 million provided. Now with staff changes, that might be different this year, but we'll be happy to provide that at next month's meeting.
Thank you. I know that the advisory appreciates the transparency.
What happens in that situation, Kiana? Like, you guys spend the $1 million from the HOF and then the other URA sources cover the rest of it?
Yes. Yes. Some of the programs we've been fundraising outside of HOF, like down payment and closing cost assistance program. Our grants team, along with Brianna Benjamin, did a great application to the FAIR state funds and won an award there. And so we'll be able to take some admin from that as well. And so, yes, across many programs, we have many different funding sources and pull admin costs out of all of them. The rental gap program is another program that has many different sources. We have CDBG funds there, home funds. But because these projects are so large, we kind of need, to bring together a lot of different sources to support that work.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Other questions about the worksheet or the admin portion? If not, Kiana, we can move ahead.
Okay, thank you. We'll send an email out hopefully by the end of the week with more information and more instructions for the worksheet. So thank you so much. Moving ahead on the agenda, this is the URA announcements, State of the HOF section. So we don't have any announcements this month, but we do want to talk through expenditures. The 2025 expenditures by program are shown on the screen. You'll see that the rental gap program, I'm sorry, this is not 2025. This is for August. Forgive me. This is just the monthly expenditures. But rental gap program takes the larger chunk out of all of them. So for rental gap program, we spent $189,209. Just kind of going around the circle here. Legal assistance program, $53,298. Small landlord fund, we're starting to pay out some of those projects and get those moving, $39,357. Down payment and closing costs program, $15,875. And then HAP, homeowner assistance program, this is the URA portion where we're still working through the backlog. In August, we spent $34,885. And then on to
these are commingled years.
Correct. Commingled years. Moving on to the 2025 expenditures from January through the end of August. The rental gap program has we've spent $1,473,967. Legal assistance program, $114,529. Small landlord fund, $105,467. HOF repay is not a program, it's an account, and we have not, it's a source from the HOF. It's the repay and the interest line item. We haven't spent anything out of that line item, but the 620, there is $627,620 available there. So we just want to make sure we could show you what's available. We haven't spent any of that yet. And the down payment and closing cost assistance program, we've spent $225,875. For sale development program, $585,966. And then in the HAP program for the year, we've spent $1,011, 1,011,478. I can't get the number out right. So these are our expenditures for the full year and then also breaking out for the month of August. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any for the expenditures.
Kiana, for the repay, is that, who decides how that gets used? Is that just like URA staff, or does that come to us or somebody else?
No, staff doesn't use it. We could use it for an emergency situation or for like an overage, or, you know, if we needed to request, we would always request that we use it through the HOF advisory board.
Okay.
But this is money that we can potentially program or think about how to use in the upcoming round, or could potentially go towards future programming, or the, you know, things that the public are interested in us funding in the future.
Thank you.
So
You're welcome.
this will be on the agenda in future meetings this year as part of our allocation discussion. Obviously, the URA is part of the approvals of determinations that we make, but this is the first year we've really seen the dollars that are there. And this will need to be part of our conversation of how we want to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with our
Yeah, that's
URA
real money. That's
partners,
exciting.
it's a significant amount of money. So it does give us, again, you know, some ability to think through what are opportunities. So board members can certainly have ideas in the back of their heads as you're going through your allocation sheet. Thinking about $627,000 as a less transparent part of that equation, but certainly something for us to be thinking about. I think as we're prioritizing, we should be prioritizing globally with the dollars that we're thinking about, the $10 million, but then also sort of beyond that, in case there were ever, you know, there are funds in the HOF repay. There could be other funds that maybe the HOF could leverage with partners like the Department of Human Services. I believe Chuck is in the crowd. I think it's always good for us to be thinking about our allocation responsibilities through the lens of what does affordable look like even beyond the fund. So I hope that everyone is thinking in those creative ways as you go through your worksheets in September.
And it's also a good visual, or a good opportunity to show the public or for the advisory board to understand that while loan programs aren't great for our, you know, they're not the best opportunity sometimes for our low income families. They do provide the opportunity to bring money back into the fund to be reused. And so it's just another thing to consider as we think about our programs. If they're all grants, that's HOF repay will totally go away. So just want to throw that out there as well.
Are there any public comments in the room from today's guests? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Motion to adjourn, Ellie Fisher.
Thank you, Ellie. We do not need a second on the adjournment. Just as a note, the next HOP Advisory Board meeting is not September 2nd. Today is September 2nd.
Oh, darn it.
So we
Sorry.
will be meeting the first Tuesday in October. Thank you to everyone for participating today. This was great to have everyone together as we start the allocation conversation. It's much appreciated. For next month's meeting in October, as we are going to be talking through a lot of things that can be somewhat charged in the discussion. We're all going to have different priorities and we're all going to have different viewpoints. It would be great if we could be together in the Boulevard of the Allies basement level conference room with the URA. So if you do have the opportunity to join us next month in person, that would be fantastic.
And that date is October 7th. Sorry for the error.
No worries, Kiana. This year is catapulting by us. So understanding that there's only one more quarter left this year, we have a lot of work to do. And thank you all for your ongoing participation. And if we have no other new business, we will be adjourning the September meeting.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.